This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, December 5th, 2024, the committee is commencing its study on Air Canada's plan to impose carry-on baggage fees and carry-on baggage fees in the air transport sector. Colleagues, we'll begin our line of questioning today with Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Lawrence, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much. My questions will be for WestJet, Mr. Von Hunschbroek, if I somewhat close to that. So I just want to start out with, I understand the argument of the industry with respect to unbundling, and that for passengers who don't want the full, I think you used the example in the media, the full Happy Meal or the full value meal, that they might just want French fries or a hamburger. Now, the obvious question, though, is if you unbundle, then it should be at a reduced cost. Since you've brought out your ultra basic fare, how much cheaper is an ultra basic fare versus a basic fare?
Yeah, so I see it in the exact same way as you do. And I think that's probably also the main misunderstanding in the public space. We have actually reduced our average fare for ultra basic by 14% over what it was before when it was a normal basic fare. So there's a substantial reduction in price. And over the last 6 months, this has actually accumulated to 48 million of savings collectively for all those that used and that booked this fare. So it is a considerable saving.
Thank you very much. I find sometimes that when we talk in generalities, we lose some of the point. And so I want to take a little bit of a different approach and actually go through a fare with you. This is an actual fare that was purchased to fly from Winnipeg to Victoria on WestJet, obviously, in December. And so the base fare starts at $197. I think most would agree that's a reasonable price. But after we go through all the add-ons, we're up to $274. So if you would be good enough, I'd like to actually go through each one of these additional fees and maybe have you explain what they are and who they go to. So the first one I have is $30 for YQI in brackets other transportation charges. Could you explain what that is and who benefits from that charge?
Yes, for sure. So first of all, we differentiate between those charges that we charge as an airline that goes straight into the airline, and this is what we call air transportation charges, and that includes the base fare and this YQI surcharge that you are mentioning, and then the others are third-party charges that come on top of it. So why do we have a YQI surcharge? Because they are actually infrastructure costs that are embedded in our base fare. So, for instance, navigation charges, that's domestic charge, I think $15 per passenger. That's part of what the airline has to pay, and that's not a flow through that goes through the other taxes and fees. So this is reflected in there, and the same is also true for the aeronautical charges that we pay to airports. So it's basically a reflection of infrastructure costs that are paid by the airline and not paid through the tax box of the passenger.
So just to simplify a little bit, how much of that $30 on average would WestJet keep, and how much would flow through to NAV Canada and other government?
It all flows through.
All flows through. Thank you. And the next up is GST. I think we know what that is for $11.82. And then the next is the $9.46 charge for air traveler security charge. I know what that is, but perhaps you could share with the Canadians what that is.
Yeah, so that's money that's being paid for the security screening. However, this money doesn't go to CATSA that performs the security screening. It actually goes into the federal budget that then pays CATSA. And we assume, and we have strong belief to assume, that our passengers are actually overpaying for security charges. And the $9, that's the domestic charge. It actually goes up to I think it's somewhere in the mid-20s for international flights, although the process is the exact same thing. And this charge was just hiked by 33%. And at least as far as I could see it, I didn't see 33% additional agents doing screening. So it's just a straight price increase for Canadians.
Thank you for that. And the next is $25 for airport improvement fee.
Yeah. That's a charge that's being charged by the airports directly to the passenger, on top of what the airports charge directly to the airline that's covered in the prior fare fee that I mentioned. Now, if this must have been a flight from Victoria to Winnipeg and not the other way around, because Winnipeg actually charges $45 AIF. So this is actually at the low end what we have been showing.
And then the final charge is GST on the airport improvement fee, so a government tax on a government fee. I'm just going, so another embedded cost, another government embedded, in addition to whatever corporate taxes and otherwise that WestJet might pay, is the carbon tax. Does WestJet pay carbon tax, and if so, how much?
Absolutely, we pay carbon tax, and that's again embedded in the airfare that we charge. So it's first collected by the airline, and then we pay it on. And it's only charged for intra-provincial flights. So only on a Calgary to Edmonton flight. So that has been.
I think that's an important point to highlight. So because the carbon tax is supposed to be there to make you select choices that reduces your carbon footprint. But the way that it works in the aviation space is that if I fly from Toronto to Vancouver, I'm not paying carbon tax, or the airline's not paying carbon tax, whichever you want to slice it. But if I fly a shorter flight from Toronto to Ottawa, then I do have to pay. You do have to pay carbon tax.
That is correct, and the amount has been 10 million in 2024. I want to highlight in that context that there are lots of additional carbon reduction costs coming into this sector, and by 2028 we will be paying far north of 100 million on all of these things. By the way, half of it just coming from British Columbia.
Thank you very much.
I guess my first question is to WestJet. How does WestJet's approach to baggage fees compare to other carriers throughout Canada?
So I believe our approach is very, very similar. So there's a baggage fee that. So first of all, many people can have a carry-on, can have a checked bag for free. Yeah? So if you buy a higher fare type, or if you're a loyalty member, or if you have a credit card from WestJet, you actually get your first bag, or sometimes more, that you can check for free. And then the price is actually very transparent. You can look it up on our website. And the price differs from when you pay it. So if you buy it at booking, you pay the least. And if you buy it at the airport, basically when you show up, then it is more, because obviously we want this transaction to happen early in the process. So we give an incentive to do this early.
I will note, I'll give an example about the sky-high user fees and charges. I parked my car at the Vancouver airport on December 8th, and I picked it up on December 12th at the parkade adjacent to the departures area. The Vancouver Airport Authority charged me $325 to park my car. They doubled those costs without telling anyone. Normally, I was paying $177 to park my car there. Now it's $325, and they did that during the holiday season. So I take your comments about sky-high user fees very seriously. So my first question is, how much business do we lose to the United States because of the sky-high airport fees that we're paying in Canada?
Thank you for that question. There are a couple of airports that are very close to the US border in Buffalo and Bellingham, just to say two. And we estimate that about 7 million Canadians go across the border to fly from US airports close to the border to enjoy the lower fees and charges that those airports offer. So that's a border leakage that is actually detrimental to Canada, because those people actually they are just gone to the US, and they improve business in the US, and they are lost for Canada.
As an MP for Abbotsford, is it safe to say that there would be a positive economic impact in the Fraser Valley if the government of Canada reformed its user fee model and reduced its airport rents to encourage Canadians to use Canadian companies and Canadian airports?
100%. That's a correct assumption. There would be significantly more. By the way, it's also interesting that almost no low-cost carriers from the US fly into Canada, because they want to avoid the high cost in Canada and the high regulatory risk that comes from flying into Canada. By the way, we estimate that if the government and third-party imposed fees and charges would be half of what they are, which would be more in line with other countries, this would stimulate enough demand to fuel another airline of the size of WestJet. Or to reframe it the other way around, there are more than 10 million Canadians that are currently fenced off from using airplanes because of this high price hurdle that's imposed from third-party and government-controlled fees and charges. That's the reality in this country,
Okay,
and
so
that's
I'm
what we
gonna
collectively need to work on.
high taxes, high user fees has a negative impact on the airport sector in Canada, both in terms of passengers and the offshoots in our broader economy where we do have those key airports like my community of Abbotsford.
Exactly, and it fences off low-income Canadians that cannot afford a ticket because this price is just too high.
Thank you. My second question to WestJet is regarding the carbon tax. When a future Conservative government axes the carbon tax, can WestJet assure that tickets will go down? The ticket costs will go down as a result?
Yes, we will. So far, though, the carbon tax is 10 million because it's only confined to intra-provincial flying. But what I said before, this is going up by more than tenfold over the years to come with all the provincial, national, and international efforts to reduce carbon emission. This will become a very, very big burden for airlines and therefore for passengers if this trend continues. And
so I can safely say that to my constituents who fly regularly for business to Edmonton and Calgary from Abbotsford, that by axing the carbon tax, they will see a reduction in the cost they're paying on their airline ticket.
So between Abbotsford and Edmonton, there is no carbon tax because this is an inter-provincial flight.
My apologies. Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
From Prince George to Vancouver, yes.
From Prince George to Vancouver, okay. Thank you so much. My third question relates to babies. I have a young daughter. I have a young son, and constituents in my riding want to make sure that baby bags are not subject to bag fees, as we have discussed earlier. A quick answer.
They are not. They are not subject to this.
Thank you.
My concern is how soon are you going to be able to move from this urban model of flying that you currently have and get back into these regional hubs, I call them, like Gander, for example, in the rural parts of Canada, because that's sadly missing. And these fees are not something I like, but that's a bigger concern right now.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So first of all, I want to dispute we do fly to many regional airports, and especially in Western Canada, and this is a big part of our strategy. But what I will say, though, is that especially those high fees and charges are burdening regional airports more than the big airports, because those routes often are very, very marginal. And if then the prices go up and therefore less people fly, or it cannot be put on the ticket price, then those routes can easily go under. And by the way, APPR is also a big risk for regional flying, because if you have just one flight that becomes APPR eligible, this can easily eat off the entire profit for the year. So then you can equally just not fly.
Yeah.
By the way, I just want to say I think it's a pity that you did not invite any of the CEOs of the northern regional airlines like Canadian North or any of those regional, because they actually have to deal with exactly this every single day.
We've heard that the external fees, that if they were lowered, that it would cost less for travelers, and they would be able to save money. But knowing that companies, like all of yours, have the financial responsibility to their stakeholders to make as much money as possible, what's the guarantee that even if we can manage to convince the government to lower these fees, that you just won't keep your prices at that same level or higher?
That's very easy. As I said before, we have been flying 5 million empty seats, and we would like to fill those seats. And the way to fill those seats is by having people flying that otherwise wouldn't be flying. And as I said before, if the fees and charges would be half of what they are today, this would allow us to offer tickets at an all-in ticket price that would get people off their couch to go into an airplane. Because they then can afford it. So this would grow the pie. There would be more than 10 million additional people in Canada that would then be able to fly and that can't fly today. And that's our gain. So our gain is not to put the price up, but our gain is to stimulate new people that would otherwise not fly.
But don't you think more people would fly if it was more reasonably priced?
That's exactly what I'm saying, right? That's exactly what I'm saying. More
But-
people would fly if the minimum price that you can offer would be lower. So right now, you basically cannot offer a ticket price that's below $100. If you go to Europe, people fly for 39 euro or dollar or whatever you want to take it. Yeah. So that's because the taxes and fees that are being added to the ticket is much lower in Europe, and that's why Ryanair can actually do it. And they offer the cheapest prices, and they are the most profitable airline in Europe. I mean, if you just put these things together, it's pretty obvious where the problem sits.
Yeah, and I've flown Ryanair, and I was able, as a single mom, to hop around Europe with my son and be able to afford their $30 and $40 tickets, and it was extremely reasonable. And I think that's the problem. I would have loved to have traveled across Canada with my son, but those prices here are just far outpacing those things, and I don't always and. I get that you're talking about those external fees, but I think that a lot of it still is the individual fee that people are forced to pay when it comes down to all these things.
Mr. von Hansbroek, if I can get it. Thank you. Did you have anything else? Did you just want to finish off the response to Ms. Dance? I'll let you do that. But if you're good, you're good.
No, I just want to say that we try to seat families together, and if for whatever reason they would not be seated together, they can change their seat with no cost.
The balance of my time I'll spend with you, Mr. Deleuze. We heard from WestJet that high fees and the carbon tax are preventing air passenger travel. My question is more with respect to competition. Porter's been able to do what many thought was impossible, which was to break in, just like WestJet, I guess, as well, into the air market. If in fact fees were decreased, if the carbon tax was removed and was more favorable, do you think that another Porter airline would have an easier route than you had?
Yes, absolutely. As highlighted by other members here today, the tax environment is very onerous on travelers in Canada. And with a lower tax regime, there'd be a significant increase in overall passenger traffic, which would make it easier for new competitors to enter the market. And carriers with different financial models, even those different than Porter, including ultra low-cost carriers that really depend on low fares stimulating traffic.
Thank you, and thank you for traveling in, and we really appreciate it. And thank you for your testimony there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence. And finally, for this first hour, we'll turn the floor over to Mr. Yakino. Mr. Yakino, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions are addressed to all three airline companies. I would like short answers, yes, no, and a few words, please. To every airline, was your airline company bailed out during COVID? And by whom? Go ahead, WestJet.
No, we didn't receive any government money during COVID.
Air Transit?
Yes, we did receive money from the
By who?
government. By the
Porter?
federal government.
Porter?
Loans.
Yes, from the federal government through
WestJet.
loans.
Thank you. WestJet, your employees didn't get any money from the federal government?
We received the Canadian emergency
Thank
rate.
you.
We
You
received
did
the
receive
Canadian
money.
emergency
That's all I
rate.
want to know. Yes
Yeah,
or no?
I'm answering
I
it
don't
as
want
you
any-
asked.
I want you to just give me a yes
Yeah.
or no. So do you truly believe that this is acceptable at a time when Canadians' pocketbooks are hurting and when they've been saving for their travels for you to react this way? When you were having a hard time, the government of Canada bailed you out financially. Is that correct to each airline? Directly or indirectly? Through you, directly through a company, or through your employees? Did the government of Canada bail you out when you were having a hard time?
Today that
Yes or no,
we've passed savings on to consumers, so I don't understand what
Thank you.
you're asking.
Porter?
about.
Porter?
I'm not sure what the question is. Sorry, can you repeat?
When you were having a hard time, did the government of Canada bail you out?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, we were recipients of a leaf loan.
Do you know, Porter? Thank you. Air Transit. What's your response?
We've received the leaf loan, just so that everybody understands as well. Other countries have received subsidies.
Okay. So you've all had good net profits, right? But do you know
No.
who
No.
financed?
No.
Do you know?
That's not correct, sir.
Excuse me.
That's not
Do you
correct,
know
sir.
who financed? Excuse me, I have a question to ask. Do you know who financed the government of Canada? Do you know? Do you know who finances the government of Canada? Does anybody know of the three companies that are here today? I guess you don't know, but let me tell you, it's the citizens, Canadians. Yes, Canadian citizens. Those same citizens that travel on your planes, those same citizens who today would need a little support, would need a little relief. So here you are imposing all these fees on Canadians. And if you don't remember, it was Canadians that bailed you out in hard times. Thank you very much for showing good support, consideration towards Canadians.
Yeah. So
you very much, Mr.
unlike the
Iacono.
government,
Sorry,
airlines have been very
Mr. Chair,
successful
Mr.
in
Chair,
lowering fares.
point of order. Generally, you give the witness the same amount of time as you've spoken. Mr. Iacono took all the time. I think WestJet deserves 30 seconds to
I will
respond.
say this, Mr. Lawrence, members are free to ask questions or to make statements during their time. He's chosen to make
Point of
statements
order.
and ask questions.
Point of order, Chair.
Colleagues, Mr. Iacono, I just want to say we are done with the first hour. We do have a
Point of
second
order,
panel
Mr.
here. I'll listen to your point of order, Mr. Iacono.
I did ask specific responses. It was a yes, no.
And I referenced that. You did ask questions,
Thank you.
so you used a portion of your time for questions. You used a portion of your time for comments. You're allowed to do both, sir. With that, I want to thank all of the witnesses for appearing with us here in person or online and for sharing their testimony today. I will suspend the meeting for 2 minutes, colleagues, to welcome the next round of witnesses. The meeting is suspended.